In this video, I'm going to show you a 3-step plan you can use to get back on track if your kid is wanting to quit piano lessons. So let's hurry up and get started. A vast majority of the time, students quit piano because either they or you feel like they're not making progress. Now, I'm going to show you a 3-step way that you can find the root cause of that problem and fix it. But first, we're going to need to look at sort of the 3 variables of piano lessons as well as the connections between them before we can get started. Now, first, of course, we have the teacher. So the teacher is the one who presents the information, the one who selects the methods and materials, the person who has their own philosophy of teaching, and probably most importantly, the one who provides the practice plan for your kid, the practice plan for the student. And of course, that is all delivered to our next variable, which is the student themselves. And the student, of course, is responsible for following through on the instruction received from the teacher at home. As we know, not that much time is actually spent with the teacher, so the majority of the work that happens that results in progress happens at home in between the lessons. And the work that that student puts through, the sort of output of that, is observed by you, the parent. Now, this is the sort of chain or flow that comprises most lessons, but there are a couple more connections that make this a little bit more ideal. Ideally, we want to have a little bit more of a two-way street between the student and the parent, making sure that you, the parent, are checking in on your student, that they're following through on the teacher's instructions, that they understand things like that. And ideally, we also really want a two-way connection between the teacher and the parent, so that the parent's informing the teacher about what's going on at home from week to week, because again, we can't really spy on our students at home, so we rely on you guys, the parents, for that. And similarly, it's up to the teacher to communicate regularly with parents about what the expectations of the students in between lessons, what they should be working on, things like that. Now, our 3 steps are basically going to be examining each one of these variables and figuring out where the problem is. And the best place to start is talking to the teacher. Now, I should say up front, a lot of parents' first inclination when things aren't going well is to change teachers. We really, really strongly recommend against this for a number of reasons. First, it's fairly unfair to the teacher to not, at least open up that pathway of communication to figure out where the problem is. And more importantly is if the problem lies in one of the other 2 variables, the parent or your role in the whole thing, then it doesn't matter what happens with the teacher. You could have any teacher, and it's still going to be an unsuccessful experience if the problem lies in one of the other 2 bubbles here. So when you talk to the teacher, you want to check on the instructions are being given, the materials are being given, what the practice plan is. That's probably the most important thing. And make sure the teacher explains it in such a way that you, the parent, understand it. And often we hear parents say, well, I'm not a musician, I don't really understand. A good teacher should be able to explain it so that you, the parent, understand, even in sort of loose terms. Or if it's helpful, you can also just ask the teacher, well, what is success? Tell me what success looks like so that I know what to look for at home, because I don't feel like Johnny is progressing or Johnny doesn't feel like Johnny's progressing. And I can't state that enough, that you want to make sure that you understand that. And then give it a little bit of time, sit in on a couple of lessons so that you can sort of see what's going on, see if it really falls in line with what the teacher's been telling you. Make sure your kid understands it and see how things go for a few weeks. And if at that point you feel like things really aren't going well, or if you feel like you don't have a really clear understanding of where this is all going, then at that point it might be time to consider changing teachers. Now, we've seen this go both ways. We've seen parents put complete trust in teachers where frankly the teaching was just trash. It was a good relationship between the student and the teacher, but years went by with no progress. The kids were getting into middle school, still playing elementary level music, and then they ended up quitting. And that's always kind of a sad thing to see. But then we've also seen the other extreme where there was actually some good teaching going on, and because of a parent's sort of preconceived notions about what progress is, they just switched teachers without even opening up the conversation. So I can't say this enough. It's extremely important to open that line of communication with the teacher and make sure that you understand the plan. Step number 2 is simple. Check on your kid. Has your kid followed through on what was given to them in the lesson to do over the course of the week? Think of it like this. You would never go to a trainer, not do anything that they said, and then get mad at them later when you don't lose weight or build muscle or whatever. It's pretty much the exact same thing with lessons. And this will actually help validate that discussion you had with your teacher. Because if your kid's not doing what was assigned, then you can't really go back and blame the teacher. But if your kid does everything that was assigned to the letter, and it still feels like you're not really making traction, then you have a good reason to go back to the teacher, say, okay, we did everything that you wrote down everything you assigned for the week for the last 3 weeks, and it still feels like we're not really moving along, what's going on. And that opens the door to either figure out if a different approach is needed or if there's some kind of misunderstanding with the instructions. And this will change depending on how old your kid is. If your kid is 4, 5, or 6 years old, there's going to be a much greater responsibility on you, the parent, simply because they are not old enough to be able to read the teacher's instructions, follow through on the teacher's instructions, all that kind of stuff. But if your kid's a senior in high school, they're basically an adult and most of the responsibility is on them. But they are still going to need some checking in on you because remember, even though they're almost adults, technically they're still not adults yet. And step number 3, you've pretty much done at this point. It's essentially stepping up in your role as the parent in this trinity of piano lessons. So you've already sort of done this. By the time you get to this point, you've spoken with the teacher, you've checked in on your student to make sure they're following through, and most importantly, you want to keep that line of communication open with the teacher so that it doesn't have to be after every single lesson. We don't want to be too invasive, and we want to give some responsibility to your student, but we do want to make sure that you are thoroughly in the loop so that you know what's going on, you know what success looks like, and you know that you're on a solid path forward. And there you have it. By taking sort of a scientific method approach to each of these 3 variables, this sort of triangle of piano lessons, you can usually figure out the root cause of why your kid might want to quit piano lessons, especially if they feel like they're not making progress, and figure out a way to course correct it fairly quickly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please do hit the like button and the subscribe button for more videos like this, and thank you for watching.